As you can see, I'm feeling a little sassy today. So got my rouge lip, as my grandma would say. And I don't know why I'm feeling so sassy, because what I'm making is a baby shower cake. So it's not the sassiest of cakes ever. This may have been more appropriate for, say, like my lipstick cake or something. But anyhow, I just came from a meeting with one of our instructors, and she had a really pretty red lip on yesterday, so I think I'm feeling a little inspired by that. Anyways, so we're making a 3-tier baby cake. So it's baby shower cake. I call it an antique gold baby shower cake. So all of the things, rattles and pacifiers and diaper pins and blocks are going to be painted in like a really pretty gold. And then the cake is just going to be very simple 3-tier. The bottom we're going to do like a chalkboard, and then the top 2 tiers are just going to be plain white, very chic, very like frou-frou baby shower cake, but with a little bit of a modern element to it as well, with the chalkboarding, and you know that's a super popular thing right now in the cake decorating world. So in front of me I have our first tier, which is a 10-inch cake. I have 4 layers and just a buttercream, and then I have some black candy melts here. Now, the thing about the black candy melts, I actually like these for this cake, love them for this cake, because they're not really all the way black. So they're kind of a grayish, almost like a slate gray kind of black. And if you look at like a chalkboard, you know, you would dust a little powdered sugar to give that like chalkboard effect. But this already has it. And chalkboard isn't stark black. It has this kind of like grayish, bluish black tint to it. So these are good. Now these I've melted these over a double boiler, just like we did with the ice cream cake candy melting tutorial. And they're a little bit runny still, but I'm mixing the parts that are setting already in with what is a little bit runny to give it a more of a stiff consistency, just because that makes it easier to work with. So this, you don't want it to be too stiff. It's like has to be the exact right consistency, or it's going to run down the side of your cake. Also, my cake is very much room temperature. It's been sitting out for a little bit so that these don't harden up too quickly as we candy melt them. And then I just have my board here. The only reason why I really have this board here is just to catch like anything that falls off. So you don't need one of these. You could just put it on your turntable. I just happen to like to use this board. And then we have the same thing that we used before. We have this is a piece of wax paper. You could also use parchment paper, and that's going to go right on top. And then we're going to put our board, and then flip this over and put our other board on the other side. Okay, and then this is just, this is crumb coated just with buttercream. Alright, so I have an offset spatula and just my one bench scraping spatula, and we can go ahead and get started. First thing you want to do is just take not too much, but take a little bit and put it onto your top layer. Again, this is pretty runny, so I want to do it in parts. And also, because this is what I'm using is so runny, I don't want to put too much of it on top, because it's just going to make the cake slide around. So we'll keep this fairly thin up here. A little more. Actually, you know what I want to do? I want to just pour it on. And then if I pour too much, I can always take some off, but this way I can get it smoothed on well without having to get so much mess everywhere. So you're just going to smooth this all the way to the edge. And then just get it as flat as you can on top. I love this color, so cool. As one of my favorite things about using the candy melting technique is that these colors, when they dry, are like so matte and just such a different effect than like a fondant, which is usually kind of shiny, you know, has a much different feel to it. And this makes your cake have another element, like a texturized element, which I think is amazing and pretty unique to this form of icing, this medium rather. All right, now we can go ahead and put our wax paper on and just smooth it down. As best you can, all the way down to the top of the cake. And then you want to put, before you put your guide board on. Also, I took a 12-inch guide board and cut it down because my cake was just exactly about 10 inches. And I usually like to leave anywhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of an inch for a lip. You have to keep in mind that the more of a lip you leave, the more candy melts you're going to have to pack in. So that could get a little bit tedious, but you also don't want to make it so that you don't have enough room. So do your measurements carefully and leave yourself anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Take this and flip it over. I'm just going to put a little bit of candy melt on the bottom here just to stick. You could also put paper towel, but for convenience, I'm just going to use the candy melt to help it stick So this bottom board is actually just the bottom board for the cake, but it is, like, you could literally probably almost use this as a guide, but I won't. So they're going to be 2 bottom boards here. So let's just keep that in mind. And then okay, so actually, the bottom board that is on here is a little bit bigger than the bottom board that I'm using as a guide, which is why I said you could probably just use this as your bottom board guide. But instead, what I'm going to do is take my knife. I'm going to just grab my serrated knife and cut this bottom board so that it's flush with the cake. And that, so then I can use the bottom board that I made as the guide, just because I know that this one and the one that I just put on there are the same sizes. But if you did have a board here, like you had 2 boards that were the same size, it's no problem with using your bottom cake board as your guide. But I'm not going to do that today, so I'm just going to cut this down a little bit. For the rest of this. That's much easier. And go all the way around, and then okay. So I am going to have to clean all of this up a little bit and do another crumb coat on my cake. But I think for the most part, I just want to shave it down now to fit the board on the bottom. So no parts of my cake are like sticking out or anything like that. So I'm just doing that, and then I'm going to put one more crumb coat on my cake, and then we can continue this. I normally wouldn't, like, this is not really relevant to your cake per se, But because I'm having this issue, I recognize that there is a possibility that you guys may have the same issue, which is why I'm showing you this part of the tutorial. But usually, you shouldn't have this problem. Okay? So I'm just cutting some things down and going to clean this up, and then I will be right back to finish up candy melting this cake in the black candy mills, which are probably hardened by now. so I may have to melt them, but I think actually, let's see, they are getting pretty hard. So I think I'm gonna also put on some hot water just to put them over some hot water to keep them pliable while we're icing the cake, okay? So let me do that, and then I will be right back, guys. I do believe that I have gotten my life together and I'm ready to finish this process. Okay, so this is, I put this over the boiling water and it got really runny rather quickly. So I think what I'm going to do is just take it off for a moment because I don't want it to get even more runny. So we can set this to the side. The bowl is pretty hot still on the bottom, so it should keep it workable for a minute. I'm going to use this ruler to help me make sure things are lined up. I think that'll work too. If I had another of these, which I actually do, but I don't have it with me. Okay, that is lined up. However, something odd is going on this side. It's like a little bit higher. So I like to just use my eyes for everything. If you've watched any of these other tutorials, you can always hear me say that I'm eyeballing it just because I don't like measuring things. I'm not a measurement kind of person. I don't like organizing things. I don't like measuring things. I don't like filing paperwork. I don't like none of that. None of that stuff. Level. So if you use your leveler or you're looking at it and you can see with your eye that it's not level, you usually can just push part of your cake down in order to get it leveled. If it's completely unleveled, definitely it would be in your best interest to take things off and level your cake out, because although it may not seem like a big deal right now, if you're stacking these cakes for tiers, especially if you're delivering it somewhere, the last thing you want is a cake that's uneven, or you finally stack it up there and it looks crazy crooked. And when you take, like if it's for a wedding or if it's for some kind of event, when photographers take pictures of it and when people take pictures of it, they're going to be able to see that it's not level. Like for some reason, whatever reason, pictures always bring out the absolute worst in a crooked cake. So do yourself a favor and fix that for reals. Now my candy melts are very runny, but that's okay, because I know that in a moment they're going to be very stiff again. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to go ahead and start as is, and I know that as I go along it'll stiffen up fairly quickly. I'm just going to be careful not to bring too much on board at this moment, because I know they are so runny. The first thing that I always do is fill in this lip on the top guide board. That is always my number one priority, because I want all of that to be nice and even. And have a nice edge on what is really going to be the bottom of the cake once we flip it back over. So I'm just working a little bit at a time. Again, just because this is so runny. So if you don't want to have to work such a little bit at a time, Then definitely let your candy melts get a little stiffer. If you ever try to cover or dip some cake pops, you know how quickly candy melts begin to harden. So although these are very runny, it's not like ganache. Like ganache, you can make ganache, it'll be runny and you literally have to give it like 2 days in order to harden up, at least overnight. But these will harden up within like a matter of maybe a half an hour, not even. Our cake has set in the freezer for a bit, so it's ready for its big unveiling. And I just have my sharp palette knife that I always use for this. I already flipped the cake upside down, so this is where you can see it's wet here because that's where the paper towel was. So this is okay. So once you're in there in the right spot, then you can start just going around. And you may have some pieces fall off, like you can see what's going on here, and that's okay. Just keep going around. Go all the way around. And then it should kind of come right off. Now, you want to make sure we get this paper off. So I'm going to go around a little bit more. I also have, this is because I had to go back and buttercream my cake. But I also have some areas where you can see the buttercream is kind of like popping out here. And that is totally okay. It's because I had to cut the cake down and then crumb coat it with buttercream. So the buttercream kind of got in the way. So what we're going to do is just go back over the top of this. A, for the buttercream being there, and then B, because the top needs to be smoothed out, especially this outer edge where the paper kind of meets the edge. Also needs to be smoothed out quite a bit. So once we do that, though, we should be good. Just make sure you're getting all of the paper out. Not leaving any paper pieces stuck in there. Even if the paper is sticking and you have to cut some of the candy melts away to get it out, do that. I mean, you can always put more candy melts, so that's not a big deal, but you don't want to be feeding people wax paper. They shall not soon forget that if you do. Okay, and then what I like to do is just take my palette knife and kind of run it along the edge to get any jagged, like really jagged pieces shaved down. And then you can also make sure that way that you've gotten all these paper bits out, if you have any. You may or may not. Sometimes I have that and sometimes I don't. Actually, this is my first time using wax paper to do this. When I have used parchment paper, it never got stuck. So maybe I don't know, could be coincidental, but maybe parchment paper might be better for this. Okay. And then I have the warm candy melt in front of me. So I'm just going to grab some of this and get it up to the top of my cake. And then go ahead and pretty quickly try to smooth it into those cracks, because the cake is set and it's actually a little bit cool still. Those will harden up fairly quickly, so I want to get this smoothed on in a timely fashion. The pastels that we use on this cake I've had since I think like 2008. It's one of the very first things that I've ordered it for cake decorating. It comes in like this little container, looks like this. I barely use these, but they're great for like petal dust. Essentially what it is it's petal dust. So you know, like if you're making a gum paste flower and you get those little containers of petal dust, that's what that is, just in a different like chalk-like form. So I like them because they're good for writing on things. But what I did is I just took one of those little sticks and kind of went across this and added some black to it. Well, so when I did it with the food color, you saw that it was green, and I didn't like how the green was showing through so much. So then I went back through. You can still actually see it a little bit. This is right out of the freezer. But then I went back through and I wanted to scrape some of that off and just start again, because it was more so, I mean, it's experimentation. So I didn't want to cut that part out. Like, I wanted you to actually see the artistic process, because this is a process, and things will come to your mind and things will not come to your mind, and you have to give yourself the space and the time and the freedom to be able to experiment and to be okay if it doesn't work out. That's how you learn. And like, I thought that black paint will work out, and it didn't. I didn't like the way it looked, so I took it off and I started again. That is totally okay. Like, most of the stuff that I do, I feel is that way now. And ever since I started being okay with that process, I feel like I've become such a better cake artist. Before, it was like, well, you know, I would look at other people's stuff and I just wanted mine to be perfect and I wanted to be really awesome right away. But the truth of the matter is, when you're an artist or when you're in anything, like, most things don't work that way. You experiment, you try it, it doesn't work, you start over and you do it again and you do it better. My daughter has this book called Rosie Revere Engineer, and the little girl is like working on all these different things and she keeps failing and she's feeling bad and she doesn't want to do it anymore. And finally someone comes to her aunt, and says that failure was actually a win. You didn't fail, you won. Like, it did exactly what it needed to do, and now you learned something and you can go back and do it again better the next time. So I feel like I just wanted you guys to see that. I just wanted you guys who are budding artists and who are trying to figure out how to make this whole cake decorating thing work, understand that this is a process. It's an artistic process. And I just wanted to share mine with you, okay? So now we're all set. I put the pastels on, so now I like the color black that it is. And then I went back over and you saw I just put a little bit of powdered sugar to give more of the chalkboard feel. And so that's done. We're going to move on now. I wanted to just explain that for a moment, but now we're going to move on. And I have white candy melts here because we're going to do the 8-inch tier. 8-inch tier. So this is 6 layers of cake. And I cut this down already. The board is sticking out a little bit, but I'm not going to cut it until I flip it over, and then I'll go around and cut it with the scissors, just like I did with the 10-inch. So I have some candy melts that are ready here. I love the consistency of these. These are like perfect. Let's move these over. So these have a really good consistency for doing the candy melting. Yeah, this is almost perfect. It could be a little thicker, but I just took these off the stove and they're getting thick really quickly. So I know that it won't be long before these are like perfect consistency, and then it won't be long before they're too hard, and I might have to warm them back up. All right. Let's just take it in. So these are white Wilton candy melts, but they were a little bit yellow for my taste, so I put a little bit of blue candy melts in, just to take some of the yellow tint out. And we're just going to go ahead and do this, just like we did the other. we are finished with our 8-inch tier. Now, let me tell you, you know that I am the biggest proponent of using a piece of paper towel to buff out literally anything. So you just alternate with this. I figured this out second time around, is that in order to smooth this, I mean, the bench scrapers in the hot water work well, but when you really want to refine it and take the graininess out and just really get it nice, clean, smooth finish, you have to use really hot water. Get 2 clean paper towels and get really hot water on your paper towel, and then just kind of like how you saw me doing before, just drench it like up the side and continue to just buff it out with the wet one, and then you alternate and move over to the dry one, because it kind of acts like a sanding agent in a way, because the paper towel has that gritty, like rough pattern on it, and then the hot water smooths out the candy melts and kind of brings them together, and it's amazing. So I cannot say enough about doing that. When you want to smooth out your candy melts, do that technique. Just make sure that you don't put those wet candy melts back into your bowl, because they will cause them to seize up and you won't be able to remelt them and get them, you know, you could use them, but it'll be more stiff, almost like I don't know, like a really stiff kind of buttercream, as opposed to like this candy melt kind of texture, which is, you know, it's okay if it's stiff for doing the initial covering, but if you're trying to fill in cracks and stuff like that, you don't want it to be super stiff like that, because it just won't be that spreadable. All right, so now, I don't know why I snapped, that was weird. Okay, so now we are going to move this over to the side along with our chalkboard tier. Let's put this up here. No, actually. And the last tier that we have to do is our small little tiny baby one, our little guy, 6-inch tier. Our 6-inch tier just has 4 layers. Okay. And again, this is just same process. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this real quick. I remelted candy melts again. And this should take no time at all, because he's so super tiny. Okay guys, we are all set with our little baby boo cup here. He's done with these other two guys. Okay guys, baby little boo cup and our other two guys are all done, set to go. So now we can for our cake. So we have like a really cute little teddy bear, we have a feather, we have a pin for a cloth diaper. What else? We have a really fabulous little classic baby shoe. You know, the striped right white ones. And y'all know what I'm talking about because you know your mama made you wear them. If you're born in the 70s or 80s, myself included, you wore them shoes. The little walker shoe. So I think it's a really fantastic shoe. You can do like any baby shoe really, but this just adds so much to like the classic kind of antique, you know, vintage shower cake, which is what I was really going for. So we have that, and then we have baby blocks, and we have a rattle and a pacifier, and it's gonna be so cute once we put it all together. So I am really excited to get started with that. I'm gonna go ahead and toss these in the freezer. You can leave them out if you want. I'm just kind of obsessed with putting things in the freezer, cakes specifically. I don't know why, don't ask me, but these definitely do not have to go in the freezer. Gonna put mine in there, grab some gum paste, grab my tools, and I'll be right back so we can go ahead and get started with our hand modeling, paint those babies gold, and then put our entire cake together. All right, team, time to get started. A few more things to go, and we want to get started on the items that we need to hand mold. As I mentioned, we are going to be doing a teddy bear, a shoe, blocks, a safety pin, a feather, what else? Pacifier, rattle, okay? And the blocks are gonna say baby on them. So I am going to go through each of those things and I'm gonna show you step by step how I do them. I have all of my tools in front of me here, basically everything that I'm gonna need to do that. You don't really need that much stuff. I have like the stitching wheel, I have the color shapers, I have this little wooden tool that I would use just for like helping me shape things. I have, this is actually for later, a writing pen. I also have a template for this baby shoe. This is just one that I found on the internet. If you literally like Google baby shoe template or find a baby shoe template, you could find so many different templates for girl shoes, boy shoes, unisex shoes, whatever you need, it's probably there. But I will put the link to where I got this template from. So I just printed that out and cut it out, cut the pieces out. I have my extruder, I have a skewer, I have a toothpick, I have a number 8 round tip, a number 12 round tip, I have a star 1mm tip, and then I have a coupler. I literally use like all of my cake tools double as everything else. I mean, like I use this to cut out holes, but it's a coupler for like a really big piping bag. I have scissors, powdered sugar, gum paste. You could use fondant. You could also use pastiage. You could use modeling chocolate, although we're painting this in gold, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend modeling chocolate because it's kind of hard to paint it. And then you have powdered sugar in a little bowl. That's for our pacifier, and Crisco. Okay, so not that many things at all. And also, can't forget about this, we have water and a paintbrush to help things stick together. First thing we're going to do is our baby shoe. With the gum paste, it shouldn't take too long for your baby shoe to dry. Probably just a couple hours to maybe like a day. If you wanted to use fondant, that's okay too. You just need to give it a little bit more time to completely dry. But this is such a small item that I would say for it to dry, even if it's fondant, might take 2 days. I mean, you really don't have to have that much lead time at all. For all of the pieces, you probably are going to need somewhere between 2.5 to 5 pounds. The teddy bear is going to take up a lot of the fondant. The blocks kind of take up a good amount of the fondant. You probably won't need 5 pounds. You probably just need somewhere closer to 2.5. But just to make sure you have enough, I would say just get, you know, a good sized box, and then you should be able to work with that and make it into gum paste, and then you can, or leave it as fondant, and then you should have enough to work with. Let's grab our shoe. So this template has 4 pieces. There's the bottom, there is the wraparound piece, and there is the toe piece here. The wraparound piece, also known as like the outer part of the shoe, it actually goes this way. This is kind of faded, but you can see where once you print this out, you'll be able to see that it has like dots on it, so you can see where this actually goes. So this is the bottom part of the shoe. And then we have our tongue here, okay? So then you just want to move that over. Put a little gum paste down. You really just need a small rolling pin for this, but sometimes I use my big rolling pin for all the little things because I don't feel like grabbing my small one. I feel like it's the rebel in me. I know that I should be using the small rolling pin, so naturally I usually grab the big one for like the littlest thing, which is ridiculous. And then just roll that out, probably about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. You want it to be, thick enough that it'll hold up and be sturdy, but you also want it to look like baby shoe fabric, which isn't super thick. Okay, and then you just make sure that you have enough room, so kind of like sit all your items on there and make sure everything's gonna fit. That certainly does. We're only doing 1 baby shoe for this cake, but if you wanted to, you could definitely do 2 baby shoes. You don't even have to really reverse the order of everything, because with this template, it's like you really can't tell which one is the right or the left shoe. But this looks like this might be where the arch would be. So if you needed to, you could reverse it. But I think if you made it the exact same way for both right and left shoe, you wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. So I just have my blade. Gonna put some Crisco down all over actually. And then just lay my template over. And leave that for a second, and I'm going to cut out the sole. I just smooth it while the template is still on here, so I know where this should be tucked in. So I'm smoothing around there. And then just so that this doesn't get dry before I have an opportunity to do the other things I wanted to do, I'm going to take this off and do it for a moment before I cut the other pieces out, because if you wait and it gets dried out, it's gonna crack and it's gonna get difficult on you. So I just want to put in 3 little holes for the shoestrings. On the other side. And I'm going to just stitch around here, all the way like on the outer edge, around my holes. And this way, and this way. And down around my bottom edge as well. It's basically, I'm stitching around the entire parameter. Then I want to stitch one right up the middle. Actually, do one more. Okay, so there's our stitching. And then, like I said, while this is still pliable, I'm going to go ahead and kind of put it in the shape that I need it. I'm not going to stick it on yet because I actually need to put my tongue on first, but I do want to get it in that general shape so that I'm not trying to bend it later and it's, you know, getting too cracky for me. Cracky, it's crackish. Here, I'm going to put it up against here. Now I am going to cut my toe piece out. Also, to help your gum paste not dry as you're using it, you could cover it with saran wrap, which is really kind of what I should be doing. Don't tell nobody, but I'm not, per my usual. Okay. So that's going to go on like that. But I do want to do a little stitch around the perimeter of this as well. Alright, then we can get some water and just put it. You may find that you need to add like a little piece of paper towel or a little piece of saran wrap into this once you put the toe on like this. But I think that for me, I never actually need, I mean, this is such a little item. It's, you know, all the pieces are so small that once you shape them how they need to go, they rarely ever have a problem like drooping or falling over. So don't worry about it too much. But if you feel compelled, by all means, do put a little something in there. Just make sure that you can pull it out later. And then I just use my tools to kind of push this to the very edge so it's coming out as far as it needs to. And then just kind of make sure that everything is rounded out and lining up in that toe area. Then you can put a little water around here and on this back edge, and then put this piece on. And again, you use your tools to kind of push out a little bit and make sure everything's lining up. Next piece is our tongue. This tongue, the template piece for the tongue is a rather, it's rather tiny. You know what I wanted to do also? I just thought about, I wanted to stitch it up like a little circle here. Alright, so as I said, this tongue piece is rather tiny. It's a little guy, and I don't really like how skinny it is, so I am going to cut it out as is, just to give me a base for what I'm doing. But then I'm going to roll it a little bit more so that it fits in, I mean, not fits in, but so that it looks a little more wide. I just don't like how narrow it is. So I take that out, and then keeping its basic shape, but just thinning it out and making it a little bit wider. That's what we're trying to do here. You may have to cut it down a little bit, especially toward the bottom, so that it could fit into the shoe. So you can just do a little something like that with your razor blade. And once you have it in a shape that you like, then you can go around and stitch it. Put a little water and right in. So you just prop it up. I mean, you can put it however you like it, but for me, once it starts to settle, it kind of like gets this lean back going, and you don't want it to like fall into the shoe. And so since I'm not holding anything, or I don't have anything in here to hold it up, I want to push it forward more than I really want it to be when it settles. And then as it settles, it'll, like as it goes back, it'll be in the perfect place. Okay. So that's that. Now, the next step is you want to put shoestrings on. And you want to have like little, okay, so shoestrings, holes on shoes usually have that like little metal piece, like that little grommet piece there. I am going to put the grommet piece on, and then I'm going to string my shoestrings in. So in order to do the grommets, you just need 2 tips. So I'm going to use a number 12 tip, and this, which is the number 8 tip, as I mentioned. Because the best way to cut out a ring, like what we need, a ring to go around that hole, is to use 2 circle tips, which are almost the same size, and then you just you cut them I'll show you. You cut them into each other basically. Like cut one and then cut the other one, and what you're left is with just that positive space there between the two. Just take a thin piece of your gum paste, roll it out. You're going to need 6 of these, so just roll it out fairly thin, 1/4 inch or so, maybe even 1/8 of an inch. And then I like to dip my my tips into a little powdered sugar so that my gum paste doesn't stick to them. So just cut out your circle, and then take your smaller tip. So cut out your circle with your larger, my number 12 tip, and then take your circle tip and kind of center it right in the middle of that circle, and cut out another circle. Once you do that, you should be left with this very tiny ring, and just make sure that you make a sharp enough cut so that you get that circle out. Then you want to take some water and put it in place. And then you'll need to just use probably like a little tool so you could put the ring onto like just something pointy, and then slide it off onto where your string hole is, just like that. I'm going to use this same little piece that I have cut already, just because it's convenient, to cut a back piece for my shoe. A little bit thinner. Just basically making like a long rectangle, and then I'm going to stitch up both sides. And then along the bottom end, and I just want to even that out a little bit more. So take some water, and actually I'm going to just bend this around my paintbrush to make sure I keep that hole there, and then slide it off. And I want to just put this right on the back of my shoe. Baby shoes always have that little thing on the back, especially these walker shoes. So basically you just want to extrude a long enough piece that you can cut it off and fit it into your shoe. So a shoestring is gonna like start on the outside and go up to this one too. So we're gonna start, okay. In order to figure out like how a shoestring is laced, you can just look at an actual shoe. But in any case, it would like start on the outside piece and then go up to the next piece. And then again with the other side, again it's kind of start on the inside and then go to the outside. So outside to inside rather, and outside, inside to outside. I'll just show you how I do it. But really the easiest way is to just look at an actual shoe to see how they set it up. And then you want to just put some water on each end of the shoe. And first, before we lace around anything, we're going to start on just on the inside of the shoe. So your lace should be going, cut this down a little bit. Your lace should go right across and look like it's going into that first hole on both sides. And you can actually stick it into the hole. You don't have to just make it look like it is. You can really make it go into that hole. And then the next step is to have it come from that hole. So let's put a little more water on the outside as well. You want to have it come from that hole and go into the inside of the next hole up. So just use the other side of my stitching tool to push those into the hole, push that string into the hole. And same thing again. So this time you're going to start on the outside of this one and take it around to the inside. That's backwards. So start with the outside and take it around. Also, it's probably easier if I use scissors to cut this. So like dainty. Alright, so just stick it into that second hole up. Come from the second hole up and from the outside and go to the inside of your last hole. Okay, wait. I think I missed something with my shoestring here. So I think so. There's one. Let's see. Hold on. I like you don't lace shoes all the time. I don't know why I'm having like a difficult time trying to figure this out. But in any case, so we started here, went to here. So it should have went from here to the last hole actually, I believe, and then here to the last hole, and then here. Oh, I see. Okay. So yeah, so this one from the second hole on the right should have then gone up to the last hole. If I can get it up there. Should have gone up to the last hole on the left. And then I know what happened is I didn't connect this piece yet. So this piece should have gone into here. Now that's going to be interesting trying to get it in there now, but I think I can work it out. I'm just going to duck this guy under here and use my tools. These tools are so great for this reason. You definitely can't just do this with your finger. And I feel like something still looks a little off about this, but I mean, at the end of the day, I guess shoestrings are shoestrings, so I'm not gonna like make a huge deal about it. But okay, there we go. Just needed to crisscross that a little more. That seems better. All right, cool. Now we are just going to connect two end pieces on. So grab this. And before I put those two end pieces on, I'm just gonna put it on its drying place, because I know that once I put the shoestrings on, I want them to sit up and dry a certain way. I mean, once I put the two end pieces on, so I don't want to have to move this after I put those on. So let's get it on its drying spot, and then you can just do a little extra long on your end pieces so that you can shape a tassel on the bottom. You know, shoestrings cut off and you just make this little tassel where they like burn the plastic. And you can grab actually, I'm going to just do a little texture on the other side as well, just in case people can see that. So just go ahead and stick that in there. And then you kind of want to let it just shape, you know, kind of fall, but give it a shape as well. If you need something to support it, definitely put that in. So I kind of just mold it a little bit, but let it fall however shoestring falls. You can have it out a little more, you can have it in, however you like. Give it some movement. Also, you know what? Do one stitch going up on the other side of this. Not just on the outside, but also on the inside. This buddy is not trying to stay in here. He may need a little more water. And kind of just pinch him in a little more. And then once you get your shoestrings on, I'm going to push this up. I had to push it down because I didn't want it to be in the way of putting my shoestrings on, but now that those are on, I'm going to shape this up and give it a little more movement. Perfect. Our little shoe is ready to go. I am going to put this to the side to let it dry a little bit. And then the next thing that I want to do is, I think we could do our rattle. For our rattle, we need a skewer, which is going to be kind of like the what holds our rattle together. So I have a skewer here. It's going to end up being cut down a little bit. But we start off our rattle with a ball. So just grab a ball of your gum paste. And in order to make the gum paste into a ball shape, you want to get as many of the seams out as you can. So I'm kind of rolling this quite a bit to get it pliable. And even if you wanted to like put this in the microwave for a second so that it is more easily manipulated, that would be good as well. This is a little bit of a large ball, so I'm going to take some of this off. Okay, so you just kind of shape it. I mean, you know how to shape a ball. I like to just like do like this, which is a weird sort of a thing, but I feel like it helps to get it into a ball shape. You could roll it around your counter. Sometimes I put it in a bowl and like roll it around the bowl to get it into a ball shape. Anything you need to do. It seems like it would be a lot easier to make fondant or gum paste into a ball shape, but it's actually sort of challenging. I feel like it's the same thing with like trying to make cake pops into a perfect ball. For some reason, you always got some kind of lump and hump and bump sticking out. But just keep manipulating it, and eventually you will get there. The most important thing you want to make sure is that any seams or cracks that you have are toward the bottom of your ball. You don't want those sticking out at the top. to use a little water to help bring my seams together. So I'm just grabbing a paper towel with a little bit of warm water to kind of help rub those in. If you feel like, this is the other option, if you feel like getting this into a perfectly round ball shape is just not happening, it's not an option, and you don't feel like spending a bunch of time on that, you could also make a baby shower rattle that's a little more flat. Like some rattles kind of look like this, almost like hamburger bun, where it's not perfectly round. Or you can just keep working on it until it does get round. Totally up to you. But there are baby rattles that are not perfectly round, and I actually like the shape of that too. Once you do get it in a nice rounded shape that you approve of, then you can start, find where your seam is, or where, if you have any seams left. My hands are a little sticky. But if you have seams, then you want that to be where you stick the skewer in. So take a look around, see where your seam is, and then stick your skewer in a little water and put it right down into the middle. Actually, other way around, because I want the sharp end to point up. Okay? And then you can round it out a little bit more once you put your skewer in. Just make sure that it's centered. Then, this next part is super easy. So you just grab some gum paste. I'm just going to set this into my powdered sugar so that it doesn't dry so flat, so it doesn't start to get really flat on the top. Grab your gum paste and then roll it out really thick. You really want this to be like almost like a ½ inch thick. This is going to make up the handle, like the stick handle part of your rattle here. I find this is the easiest way to make the handle, because then you don't have to worry about getting like a round piece of cylinder fondant on the handle. Also, I saw a baby rattle on the internet and it had this same kind of handle on it. I thought it was pretty cool. So we're going to do it that way. Just grab, let me see. I'm going to use my number 12 tip for this. So just grab your tip and cut circles out. Okay, you just want to cut these little circles, all the same size, kind of smooth the edges. You can even press them down a little bit, and then put some water up and down your skewer. And then you want to center it over your skewer and push it right down onto there. All the way down. Okay, super duper easy. And you're going to continue to do that until your rattle is the height, or until you have the height on the handle that you want. Ends up being around like 15 to 20 of these pieces, depending on how thick they are. But you generally want to have all of them to be the same thickness. And as you put them on, just add a little bit of water onto each one so that they stick together in the end. Once you feel like your rattle has a nice height on it, what I do is I just pull the stick out for a minute out of the ball and then roll this onto a countertop to get all of the pieces to be lined up. You see how it's like kind of squiggly and like not totally lined up? So you can get them all on the same page by taking it out and like pushing it and rolling it along the counter. Make sure that everyone's doing the same thing here. As the end pieces, I am going to take my number 1M star tip and make one bigger circle to go like cap off the end. Just roll that out. Actually, that's not thick enough. I want it to be a little thicker, but I am going to use this for something else. So set that to the side for a moment. And roll this one out, but leave it really thick. Slide that onto your skewer with the flat edge facing the bottom of the handle and just center it up. Then I'm going to take my huge coupler. This doesn't have like a number for the size or anything. Take your coupler and we're going to do that circle trick again. So cut it, and then you can either take the other side of your coupler or you can either use this 1M tip, which I think I'm going to use the 1M tip, and cut out your second circle. And then that is going to be the end piece for the rattle. But before we can do that, we need to cut off the skewer. So I do want the end piece of the rattle to have something to stick on, so I'm just going to cut with a little bit of room. Whoa. Okay, and put a little water there. And stick that right on. And you can kind of shape it up a little bit. And you can look at it to see if your proportions are okay. If they're not, you can always change a few things. I kind of feel like I want this circle to be a little bigger. So what I'm going to do is roll it one more time using the same, and leave it a little thicker, but using my same cutters, my same circles. I'm going to push that in and use my tip. And the thicker it is, the more it spreads as you do that, and then you can kind of even stretch it out a bit so that it'll be a little bit bigger. And then I'm just going to take my thicker end and stick it back onto my skewer here. Okay, and you could stick like paper towel or saran wrap in there if you wanted to hold a certain shape, if you wanted to be really round. I don't mind it getting flat even if it was like that. So however it falls at this point is fine with me. So I'm just going to put that on there. And then we have one very last part for the rattle where I want to put a whole like string right around the outer edge of the ball. Okay, so it can still sit into the powdered sugar for a moment. And I do want to let it dry that way inside of like either cornstarch or powdered sugar so that it'll hold its shape well. Hold its shape. Just roll this out pretty thick, but also long and skinny. Because you need a piece of gum paste that's going to wrap all the way around. Do it to about 1/4 inch thick. I'm going to use a straight edge just to cut a little thin piece. And smooth out the edges on this. Just want to make sure it fits. And that's like almost exact. It's a little bit short actually. So I'm going to stretch it out a bit as I smooth the edges. Stretch it out just a bit and then for a second take this out so that I can wrap it around. You want to determine where the back of your rattle is because that's the part that's going to face the cake, so you won't be able to see this seam back here. And I just take my blade and cut through both of those pieces so that they will meet together and be flush. So take it and put a little water around it or on it and then wrap it. And just picking this up. Don't be afraid to pick it up. I mean, it's totally fine, especially because it's skewer in here. But you want to make sure that this little embellishment is even, that it doesn't look wobbly. So for that, you probably need to pick it up. It's like an 80s workout headband. Okay, you need to stay there. Alright, the rattle is good to go. We're going to do our pacifier. For the pacifier, you're going to have 4 pieces. You have the hook, you have the like mouth guard piece, and then you have the nipple, and then you have like a little connector piece. So first thing is we want to take a chunk and kind of form it to make the nipple. The nipple can look like whatever it wants to look like. I mean, any kind of nipple is fine. You could use your thumb and then kind of like do this to make a kind of a newer nipple. But I want this to look like a metal pacifier, kind of like an old school pacifier nipple. So I'm just going to start making it into a teardrop shape. You just roll it in your hand like such. And then you have to flatten out the bottom and kind of get that, you know, it's almost like a pear. And you can also use your countertop for this to help the bottom widen while you narrow out the top. Okay? That's super duper easy. And then I just take a toothpick, because the way that I'm going to connect this is with a toothpick. So you just put a hole where that toothpick can sit later after this all dries. Okay? And then our next piece would be a little cube to act as a connector between that mouth guard and the actual nipple. So for that, I just use something flat like fondant smoothers, and I shape it into a cube, which is so easy. You just squeeze it on each side and then flatten it on the top. Simplest way to make a cube, like ever. And then for that, I'm going to put a little hole as well, because it's going to connect like this. So you want to make sure that can fit a toothpick. And then what's going to go in between those two pieces is that little mouth guard. You want the mouth guard to be fairly thin. So put a little powdered sugar down and roll this out pretty thin, like a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch thin. Okay, and then you can just use a circle cutter. Either grab a metal circle cutter or some type of a large round tip that you can cut this into a circle with smooth edges. So I happen to have a circle cutter for that. Just make sure you get it cut all the way through. And then you want to look at the way this is going to be shaped. Even if your circle cutter is not big enough, you could also always like make this a little bit more wide, increase the diameter by just rolling it out and turning it in a circle to keep it even as you roll it out more. And just smooth the edges. Okay, so the way that this is going to sit on here is like this. So you want it to dry with a little bit of a curve to it. For that, you could put it in a little bowl like I have here and kind of shape it around into the powdered sugar the way that you want it to dry. Okay, so you're going to have it dry like this, and I'll show you later when we put it together. It's going to go here. So in order to get it to be able to stick there, you want to make sure you put a hole right in the middle as well. Holes through everything. Holes for everybody. Okay? And then I'm just smoothing that into my little bowl there. And let that dry that way. On an angle. The last piece of the pacifier we don't need, actually, you know what, I'm not going to even use because we don't need it. I was going to use the extruder and put on a circle tip, but this is such a small piece that we can just roll it out the old-fashioned way with our hands. So just take your piece of fondant and roll a snake, a pretty thin snake to be the hook on the pacifier. You want it to be just a couple inches long, about 2 to 3 inches. And then you can cut it down. You can use your fondant smoothers to make sure that it's not lumpy. Or you can eliminate this problem by just using your clay extruder, since that's what it's for anyway. But you just want to make sure you don't have any lumps. And then shape it around something. So I'm going to use this circle cutter to shape it. But actually I'm not, because that is much too large. But you want it to have a round shape. And you want to make sure that it connects to this piece in the right way, because you're going to let this dry. But ultimately you want this to look like it's connected. So even, say like this, could be a good piece for it to dry around. It doesn't have to sit there the whole time. You can just shape it that way and then take it out. Make sure that fits in, which there's just a little bit of a gap. I'm going to push it in. Okay? So letting it dry like that would be a good idea too. Alright, and this is actually going to go this way, I think. So those two pieces will go together, and then we have this piece, which is going to connect in. Okay? I just want to make sure that this end is flush, both ends actually, so that they fit in well with the connector piece of the pacifier. Alright. Okay, just like that. So I'm going to grab my shoe from here and put these things so that they can continue to dry and shape them right on the surface that they're going to dry on one last time. We are moving right along. Now I want to go ahead and get this area cleaned up, just tidy up a little bit and get the rest of the stuff out that I need for the other parts of the hand modeling. So we still have the teddy bear left, we have the baby blocks that are going to say baby, we have a safety pin, and we have a feather. I'm very excited about the feather. It's a little detail that the client for this cake is actually my best friend. She's not expecting it, but this is her baby shower cake, and we didn't even talk about the feather, but her baby's father has a good amount of Native American heritage in his family. It's something they're very aware of and very proud of, and I know we all got a little Indian in us, But they really do, like, they really are, you know, they celebrate it, they're really proud of it. So I wanted to just add that in as a little special touch for them, just to know that I am thinking about what is important to them, and I wanted to really incorporate that into their baby shower cake and into their special day. And I think that that's important to note, because you want to do that as a cake decorator for your clients. You want to let them know that their cake is special and that you do understand what is important to them. And, you know, just to give a little nod here and there in the details of the cake, it really helps to set you apart, okay? So I am going to grab that stuff and I'll be right back to show you the rest of the things, and then we will put our cake together. dry pieces, and a few of these need to be put together, namely the pacifier and the baby block. I don't need to put a bottom piece, I just need to put the pieces that you're going to see. So you're not going to see the bottom, so we just want these 4 pieces, and then we want a top piece, okay? So I do actually have one too many pieces. Now you see a little bit of a gold spray because you see that I was trying to use this gold spray to cover, like give a nice gold covering onto the pieces, but it just was kind of like yellow. Like it wasn't like a good gold, didn't give it really good coverage. So I'm not going to worry about that, but I'm just going to definitely paint these over with the gold highlighter when we're done putting this together. And we let it dry for a moment. Have royal icing in a paintbrush. This is very easy to put together. All you need to do is add in royal icing and kind of put it together like a puzzle. Okay? So you want the piece with the letter on it, this is our Y piece, to sit in the front. So you want everything else to kind of go behind. Alright? So we just want to take this and put royal icing along the outer edge here, and actually a little bit along the top edge. In these corners, for sure though. And then take it and put one side on, hold that and put the other side on. Not difficult at all. Although this one's kind of funky in the way that it's sitting in there, so I'm going to turn it. Okay, and that kind of sits up by itself. You may or may not need to hold it to put the last piece on. I mean, the back piece on. But I'm going to, oh, or you may. I do want to ready my back piece though. And then pick that piece that fell back up and kind of put them all together. So move your back piece into place. And then once you put all the 4 pieces on to make your cube, let me maybe move this over before it breaks it. These will more or less support each other. Okay, so just like that. Now, you do want it to come out a little bit further, so I'm going to grab my toothpick just to kind of line it up a little better, especially on the bottom. Oh, dagnabbit. Okay, that's better. Maybe just hold it for a moment to make sure that the royal icing, just to give it a moment to kind of set and stick everything together. Now, I could be super picky and start pushing this out again to make it come all the way out to the corner, but I don't want this to fall. Let's push it a little bit. Okay. And then just make sure that all the parts are even. Now, the way that I cut these, they don't come all the way out to the back. But that is okay, because what we are going to do to compensate is just put a little extra royal icing and then smooth it over. So I'm going to like really put the royal icing on heavy on both sides. Another alternative, if you don't want to, if you want them all to like come together exactly, you know, and line up exactly, is you could just put this together and then cut a piece exactly to fit on top with the measurements that you know you'll need. But since this is going to be painted gold, if I was going to leave this a solid color, I would definitely want it to measure up exactly, because this royal icing would look sloppy. But since I'm going to paint over it, I know that the royal icing is going to be masked more or less by that paint, so I'm not too worried about it sitting exactly flush. I just want to make sure that the royal icing is smoothed in. So I'm just taking my paintbrush and smoothing the royal icing. It's almost like doing grout. Also, this royal icing is made of, it's just powdered sugar, meringue, powdered meringue, and water. Just a little water till you get it to a nice, like, glue-like consistency. Alright. So then once that's done, you can just set it to the side for a moment and let it dry. And you just want to do that same thing to all the blocks. Whatever your blocks say, mine are saying baby. It could say the baby's name. It could say welcome baby. It could say hey baby. It could say whatever. But do that same thing to all the blocks and then let them set so that the royal icing dries before you paint them gold. And then we just need to put our pacifier together. So we have all our parts here. And I want to, like I said, I'm going to connect it with a toothpick. So I'm going to put a little bit of royal icing. And then I know that this is going to go on like this. Come on. Okay. And then this piece needs to go on. Now, I want to cut this down a little bit. Put some royal icing and then just push it in. Okay, it'll kind of set up like that, and then take your piece that has been drying, and you may have to just bend it just a little. Which luckily it's willing to do for me. And then I want to connect it as well with some royal. Just holding this for a moment to help it to sit in there. My connector piece is not super dry, which is actually turning out to be better because I can push the ring. See, I can kind of push it into the connector piece, whereas if it was like completely dry at this point, I wouldn't be able to do that. Okay, that looks good. So now you just want to let your royal, oh, dang it, kidding. Okay, I won't bore you with this, but more or less you just want that piece to like, you just want to make sure you get that piece set in there. So even if you need to like put a little more royal, you need to hold it for a moment, whatever you need to do, if you need to set it so that something's pushing it in there, totally cool. Just do whatever you need to do to get it to connect, and then let it set and dry so that we can go ahead and paint it with the gold. Alright, that looks like it wants to work now. Okay, so I'm going to let the block set, let the pacifier set, and then we are going to come back to paint all these lovely things with a gold highlighter. I have several of our pieces here that are dry for the most part and ready to paint. So I just kind of want to explain, I mean the painting is pretty self-explanatory, you know, paintbrush, and I use this gold highlighter, which is not edible. It's only for items that you're not going to be feeding to people. Please, I cannot stress that enough. This stuff is beautiful. It gives a great finish, but it is not edible. So if the people are going to be eating the thing that you're putting the gold on, then you need to use a different gold, like a gold petal dust. You can ask the people in the cake decorating supply store, just check online to see what is edible. There's also some kind of a, another kind of a gold spray paint, not the one that I use, but there's a different kind, which is very metallic and shiny, which I'm pretty sure is edible. I could put the link below to the site where it is, where I saw it. I just recently found out about these things and they're awesome, and I think a lot of people use them on their cake pops for like a metallic finish, and I hope that's what they're using and not this stuff. But anyway, I am using gold highlighter, and I just have, instead of vanilla extract or lemon extract, I use canola oil. And the reason why I decided to use vegetable oil is because I like the finish that it gives. Many of you know this about me. If you paint something, for example this, you see I'm painting this with the oil. This is just pure highlighter and oil. It gives a complete, complete coverage right when you first start painting the item. Whereas I find that when you use like something that's alcohol based, you have to go over it so many times. You have to let it dry, go over it again, let it dry, go over it again. And I think the big thing with this is a lot of people wonder whether it dries. I think that it does. I mean, for me, I use this all the time, and sometimes I will do one coat of alcohol and then the oil, and so maybe that's why it's drying for me. But this time I am going to do just oil, and I could let you know later, when I edit the video and see what's going on, whether or not it dried or how long it took. But just in general, if you want to have a nice full coverage without using too much of your highlighter, because Lord knows this stuff is not cheap, then you could probably do the alcohol based or the vanilla extract based. Extract is really like, it has a lot of alcohol. I think it's more than like wine or beer, which is really crazy. But anyway, you could use that first and then go over it with the oil, so you don't have to use so much of your highlighter. writing on this tier, or to make this look like a chalkboard rather, is just the powdered sugar, what we used before. I feel like it faded off a little bit from like the cake sweating. So I just want to go ahead and rub that in a little bit. I put it up high because I am doing writing. I want to be able to have it at my eye level, more or less, at my neck level. So I'm being very liberal, as you can see, with this powdered sugar. You don't have to be as liberal. I'm going to wipe some of it off. Looking like your Uncle Larry's ashy toenail. Okay, so then you can just take a paper towel and buff some of this in. If it's still a little too much, you can always wet the paper towel, but just wiping it should be able to get it pretty good. You don't really want to introduce any more water at this point. I also have my phone here so that I can reference what kind of chalkboard writing I want to do. So I have just this little like picture. I don't know if you can see on my phone. So, I mean, you could literally use whatever kind of writing you want. If you're not comfortable freehanding, you could always, you know, get a printout and you can put it up here and just like etch into your cake, the kind of writing that you want to do, and then go back over it. So I am not the freehand master or anything like that. So what I'm using is this little white chocolate candy melt disc. Now, if you're using black fondant to do a chalkboard cake, my understanding is that these actually write onto the black fondant. So you can just use this to do your writing. But for the candy melts, for whatever reason, they don't write on each other. So it will put a little etch into it to where I need to write and what I want it to look like. But then I have to go back over it with just an edible pen. It doesn't have a color in it. You just dip it in whatever color you want. So I just have some white food coloring. And this is not the oil-based food coloring. This is actually the water-based food coloring, which doesn't usually work to paint a cake that has candy melts or chocolate on it. But I think for this, you know, I tested it out and it was totally fine. So we are going to use that. But if you're uncomfortable using the water base and you think it's going to look weird, you can always get the white oil base, which will paint fine onto candy melts, okay? So I'm just going to deciding where I want to put this. Definitely I like this side best. And I actually already tested it out a little bit here, so I'm going to just continue with what I was doing. And go ahead and write it in. Okay, y'all, we are done. Everything is on the cake. I just took the modeling chocolate and I stuck everything on. I only had one incident where this guy wanted to fall off, and it's because the oil is on here, so just be careful with that. Although I think that the modeling chocolate worked exceptionally well for getting everything to stick. I just put the baby blocks up here. You don't have to put them so close if you want the welcome chalkboard to be seen fully, but I think everything turned out beautifully. Oh, one thing that I wanted to mention is that I wanted to try something different with these two tiers. So instead of making them just white as I initially was going to, I went through and put some baby blue because I thought that would be really cool to bring like a soft little edge because it is a baby shower cake, and to bring some, you know, different kind of element and almost to make it look like clouds. So I just went back in and put blue candy melts and then smoothed them all together. So it kind of gives that watercolor effect too, which I think is so awesome. So that's that. All right, and I think that's it. Thank you guys for joining us for this Tuesday tidbit. This was your Lotta Bit. Be sure to look out next month for another Lotta Bit, and every Tuesday of the month for your Little Bit, okay? That was a mouthful. Thank you guys. This is Sierra Taylor for Creative Cake Art. Holla.